Okay. As you know, my talk this evening is on a very, very important topic. It's on a very, very spiritual topic. The first thing I did before I even, came up here to speak to you was to write on the board the beginning of this particular topic, and that topic, of course, is melanin. I want to really get right into it because I know that some of you are very anxious for the information. Melanin, of course, is the substance that is in our system that Europeans are working night and day, brothers and sisters, literally night and day to duplicate. It's something that we take for granted, but they sure don't. It's something that saves us, and they want to save them with the melanin. As you see here on the blackboard, I have the steps that it takes to produce melanin. As the brother stated, the important information about light and fiber optics. Well, of course, the sun is the most important energy source and the major energy source on the planet. And so the process of melanin, and the process of making the melanin, of course, begins with the sun, which our people, the ancient Africans who walked along the Nile Valley,
ABC News 2020 continues. Once again, Hugh Downs.
Now, the little pill that sounds too good to be true. You name the problem: sex, aging, cancer, sleep disorders. And melatonin is being touted as the treatment. That's why millions of people are stocking up on this over-the-counter drug. Some are following their doctor's advice, but most are following the grapevine drug. Some are following their doctor's advice, but most are following the grapevine. Can melatonin live up to its reputation? Should everyone take it? We have valuable advice from our own Dr. Timothy Johnson.
Click on the TV. Scientists who treat sleep disorders find that melatonin helps their patients sleep.
Or pick up a newspaper. Or visit a bookstore, and you're bound to spot the newest medical miracle, the hormone melatonin.
The claims for melatonin are fantastic. Believers say it helps to fight AIDS, Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, helps to treat sleep problems and jet lag, may even jumpstart your sex drive. And if that's not enough, supporters also say that it helps you live longer without growing older.
Melatonin is a way of preventing disease, slowing aging, and helping you get to sleep at night.
But before you run out to buy melatonin, you should know that you already have some in your body. Melatonin is a hormone that is produced by the light-sensitive pineal gland in the center of your brain. When night falls, melatonin production starts. At morning's light, it stops. In this way, the pineal serves as the brain's internal timekeeper, telling us when to sleep or wake. But after childhood, the pineal progressively produces less and less melatonin. At age 45, humans secrete half as much as when they were children. And at age 80, melatonin production slows to a trickle. In other words, the drop in melatonin levels occurs as we age. And, according to this man, that drop in melatonin is what actually causes us to age.
And the pineal gland is a clock that triggers the aging process.
Dr. William Riegelson is a professor of medicine at the Medical College of Virginia, Virginia Commonwealth University. In his book, he describes an experiment in which scientists in Italy transplanted a pineal gland from a young mouse into an old mouse and vice versa. The result?
The animals truly rejuvenate. These older animals, after a period of time, do seem to be more youthful.
1 year after switching their pineals, Riegelson claims the two mice look almost identical, although one is half the age of the other. In human terms, he writes, it's like a 40-year-old and a 90-year-old being mistaken for twins. Of course, there's an easier way for humans to increase their melatonin levels by taking melatonin supplements, now made synthetically and sold inexpensively without prescription in health food and drugstores. And some doctors recommend taking melatonin to counter all kinds of ills. Dr. Stephen Bach, a family practitioner in upstate New York, has recommended melatonin supplements for over 300 of his patients. In your book, you have a subtitle called The Natural Plan for Better Sex. What do you mean by that?
By normalizing the body's rhythms, person feels better balanced, they feel more energetic. They come in and they say, yeah, my libido is fine. It's, 50% better.
Dr. Bach also recommends melatonin to help battle insomnia. We spoke to 3 of his patients who have suffered from sleep problems and are now taking melatonin.
I was awake at night and asleep during the day. I was exhausted constantly.
I wasn't getting any rest, and I was constantly tired all the time.
How quick did you get a response?
The first night.
The first night?
Yeah.
Literally?
Literally the first night. And I thought, I haven't slept this good since before I had kids.
There's no side effect whatsoever from the melatonin. It's amazing.
And if longer life, better sex, and a good night's sleep are not enough, there's more.
The substance that is in our system that Europeans are working night and day, brothers and sisters, literally night and day to duplicate.
Now, the systems are basically the same. They're all rhythmicity involved. African people have diseases of rhythmicity, where the organs are not firing in sequence of rhythmicity because of the acid state of our diet. When you have a highly acid diet, it causes deterioration of the pineal gland. By the time a white person is 7 years old, 30% of their pineal gland is not functioning. When they reach 18, it's 80% of their pineal gland is not functioning. And if you follow a white person's diet, you're going to kill your pineal gland. When they get older, they have calcification of the corpus callosum. That's the part that divides your left brain and right brain in half. That little skin in there gets hard and stops the transmission between the left and right hemisphere. African people have the largest corpus callosum. That means we have more communication between the left brain and right brain. We have one mind. We have one mind. We're not right-minded or left-minded. We're one-minded from one God. There's no other way we can be. But when you have deterioration of that dividing part, it gets very hard, and it stops the messages from going back and forth. And they call it a melanin deficiency, which is caused by acid diet. It causes your pineal gland to not function, and when it does function, it misfires. It's a disease of rhythmicity. You can use things to regenerate the pineal gland. You can go into herbs like echinacea, increase the blood perfusion to the brain with ginkgo, gota cola, rosemary, and things that work on the glands. Just look under glands, look under females. All their herbs are usually gland orientated. Take some of those herbs, cleanse the pineal gland, golden seal, echinacea, work on it, because you're losing the rhythmicity of your system, and our system is based on rhythm, which is called laws, which is called Osirian. It's law and order. The pineal gland is law and order. Now, where the pineal gland sits is in the third ventricle. Inside of the third ventricle, you have the hypothalamus, the glands that control thirst and hunger and all that sort of thing. And sitting over top of the pineal gland is this buzzing, hovering thing that the white boys don't know what the hell it is. But it just sits there. And some people call it the third eye. It's not a gland, it's not blood, it's just something that just buzzes, just hovers there. And every time one of the planets moves, a particle of that cloud moves. We are totally connected to the whole world. The world to us is in our inner space. The world to the European is outer space. We just go inside and we can contact the Osirian complex. That's how the Dogons did it. It's in our inner space. God is in us. It's in our inner space, but to the European, it's outer space. When you have deterioration in the prostate or the uterus, you have crenation or shrinking of the pineal gland. If this pineal gland shrinks, your sexual response shrinks. And all this is caused by acidic diet. That bleach white flour, alcohol, vinegar, which is the same as alcohol, does the same damage to the system as alcohol. All these things are waste byproducts of eating meat and eating rotten food. Rotten food gives off these ammonias and all these vinegars, and people have a taste for those rotten foods because and that's why they want these vinegars, these ammonias, these salts. I know you think these foods are good food, but the Europeans are used to rotten food. You see, they cook meat, and the pus and blood from the meat falls on these hot coals, and then the dirt from the coal vaporizes, and they get the dirt in the meat. They like to eat dirt. They call it barbecue. That's the dirt from those rocks. They eat dirt. They like it. And if they can't get the dirt, then they want to eat smoke. So they smoke the meat. They get the smoke from the dirt. And they call that smoked ham. But see, you're not looking at it that way. You're looking at it because they taught you it's food, but that's rotten tasting stuff. Yogurt, cheese, all that's rotten food. And they like the taste of it. Beef jerk off or whatever it's called. They like the taste of that stuff. It's rotten food. Hardtack, dried fish. It's rotten, rancid, and they like it. They rotten and ferment the hops. They call it beer. That's rotten hops. Fermented wine, that's fermented rotten grapes. Don't you get it? They like rotten stuff. But they told you, oh, this tastes good, so you got to force yourself to like that. Your mouth doesn't get water if you see a 2-ton cow moo-mooing in the field, making grass farts. You know your mouth don't get water. You know drinking cow's milk it's not natural because you can't look at a cow and get thirsty. I mean, be for real. I don't even want to get in it.
Researcher who believes that melatonin really can do amazing things.
But I take it for the potential anti-aging effect, and I take a very small dose.
That it has the potential to give you a better quality of life.
Can a pill really help you live longer by slowing our body's natural aging clock? Many believe melatonin really can do all that and more.
I've got probably 125 bottles of melatonin coming in today.
Longtime health food store owner Bill Stanton can't keep enough melatonin on his store shelves.
We're fairly low even as we speak. We can't keep the books in stock. There's been just a tremendous interest in melatonin, unbelievable interest in melatonin.
It's the pill's sleep-inducing, disease, and age-fighting potential that has Chuck Vickery joining thousands, taking a daily dose.
In the research I was reading that we produce melatonin, but as we get older, it starts reduction. And I just wanted to supplement what I'm supposed to have. And it's supposed to have age-fighting qualities and that kind of thing.
Melatonin is a natural hormone all of us have in our body. It's produced in our brain, in the pineal gland, and helps regulate our body's internal clock. One of its functions is to tell us when to wake and when to sleep. Our bodies produce the most melatonin while we're still young. Once we enter our teens, levels start to fall. By 45, we secrete half as much of the hormone as children, with melatonin production all but a trickle in old age.
So we feel that the pineal gland and melatonin control our aging process.
Dr. William Regelson is part of an international research team involved in nearly 30 years of studying aging.
I'm not interested in, absolute increase in survival. It's quality of life that we're looking for, and I think melatonin may theoretically offer that.
He and Italian researcher Dr. Walter Pierpaoli co-authored this book, The Melatonin Miracle. In it, they report on their studies.
Also, we know that melatonin can protect mice from lethal virus infection.
He says by slowing the body's aging process, it keeps the immune system strong, strengthening the body's natural ability to fight off diseases like cancer.
It prevents the action of chemical agents which produce cancer.
Joseph Zambi makes his living looking at cells under a microscope. He's read most of the research.
I think anything that will strengthen my body or strengthen the cells in my body is bound to help.
He takes melatonin now to protect against cancer.
It's more of a preventive, I think, than anything else. I'm trying to perhaps forestall some problems that may occur with aging.
Miracle pill? Bill Cole believes it just may be.
The reason that I do it is for the quality of life. And I believe from the reading that I've done that it has the potential to give you a better quality of life.
A former dental surgeon, Bill takes high doses of melatonin to help with his chronic fatigue. He has for the past 1.5 years.
I'm much better. And I can't attribute the melatonin to making me better, but I have to say that getting a decent night's rest has made me feel much better.
Dr. Regelson's mice study showed melatonin added to drinking water did slow aging by 20 to 30% and gave the mice a more youthful look. He says boosting melatonin levels fools the body into thinking it's young again. Systems start functioning as they used to. Right now, studies for melatonin's anti-disease and anti-aging potential have been done in lab animals only. The only and anti-aging potential have been done in lab animals only. The only depression and the pill's contraceptive effects. Have been done in lab animals only. The only studies on people have been for sleep, depression, and the pill's contraceptive effects. As a scientist, Dr. Regelson wants to know more about melatonin's effect on the body's aging process and hopes the National Institute on Aging will fund human studies. But Regelson, the man, says he can't wait that long.
I'm 70 years old. I take melatonin because I can't wait another 30 more years for somebody to come up with all the answers.
Daily use of the medication may not be for everyone. Women who are pregnant or planning to get pregnant may risk unknown dangers to their babies. Doctors also don't know how melatonin affects people who are taking other medications or who may suffer from chemical brain imbalances. These are all things they still need to find out. Karen Isley, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
Now, the experts suggest you read as much of the literature on melatonin as you can, and that way you can make an educated decision about whether melatonin is right for you.
Can melatonin live up to its reputation? Can melatonin live up to its reputation? Fine.
But our ancestors in Ethiopia knew what that meant. Showing the sun crossing the equator, you would be a sun child. Suntan pills. Tablets contain ingredients your skin cells need to produce in bold black letters, melanin. The more melanin you have, the darker your tan. Contains no dyes or artificial colors. Take one or more tablets daily, depending on how tan you want to be. Toll-free number. Okay? In the sun belt. Let's go further. Here we have them in ultraviolet tanning bed, a day at the beach without the sand. Here they got the sun belt and the sun rock. See, a man is his art. You will regurgitate up your art, but we took it wrong. We saw Dracula and all that and got scared, but they were telling us something. Here, what was the number one thing Dracula couldn't stand that would kill him? The sun. So he had to get in his coffin, didn't he? Okay? And what was the thing he loved the best? Blood. So here they're telling on themselves, and we didn't catch the message coming up out of their psyche here. Okay? Can't stand the sun. But Ra, let's look at it. Cancer rate rises, melanoma, a disease of the Sun Belt, as millions of, they forgot to say, white Americans migrate from the cold and snowy climates of the north and the Sun Belt states, the south and west. Their doctors are seeing a steady and distressing rise in an often fatal form of skin cancer. Ra can't be in the sun. So here Ra's going to take care of them. Francis Wellesley points out, since black pigment melanin is the superior absorber of all energy, in my view, melanin is essential to establish this depth of understanding of God and all energy. Because whites lack the melanin sensory systems, they cannot experience or know that all is one. Perhaps that is why they cannot establish harmony with nature and the universe. However, at some unconscious level, there must be within the collective white psychic the awareness that the color black is essential to be in touch with the God and all energy, force, justice, and wisdom. Why do they clothe their men of justice in black? Why do they also clothe their scholars at the point of scholastic achievement, wisdom, in black academic robes? Of course, one might cite a few exceptions, but black attire for ministers, priests, and judges and scholars is the norm in the white supremacy system and culture throughout the globe. That's right. We go on. So here the key is the Sun Ra that they have in the Vatican. So how are they going to react to us when they see us as the sun children of color? We go on. Here they also worship Ra in the east, the Dome of the Rock. The Jews are down here wailing at something about the Wailing Wall, worshiping walls. And we talk about we worship idols, they're worshiping walls. Okay? And here we can see also where our ancestors prayed to the east that we call Becca, because the sun Ra rose in Becca, the east, and would come and light up the pineal gland. And this is what that black stone represents. It was called the Ka-Ba-Ra stone, meaning the spirit of the soul of Ra. Okay? And that's where the Kaaba, that black stone, comes from. Mecca comes from Becca, the east. When the sun Ra rose in the east, hitting that black stone, the sign of life, representing the carbon atom, where life comes out of Amen. Okay? So we can see here, let's go to Genesis chapter 32, verse 30. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. And as he passed over Peniel, the sun rose upon him, and he halted upon his thigh, meaning he stood up straight.
Yes, that's right.
So here we have Ra rising on Tutankhamun's shrine here, showing Ra hitting in his pineal gland, and this was called the caressing from Ra, okay, where the spirit rose up. And I heard someone say, pure Islam. We have to ask, how pure is it? Ra rose and he's hitting that black stone, the sign of life, representing the carbon atom, where life comes out of Amen, okay? So we can see here, let's go to Genesis chapter 32, verse 30. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. And as he passed over Peniel, the sun rose upon him, and he halted upon his thigh, meaning he stood up straight.
Yes, that's right.
I hope I don't think I'm taking you too fast, because this is New York.
They can't hear you. And you got to talk in these mics, right, so in case they miss anything, it'll come on the video.
When I first began my study of melanin about 5 years ago, it led me to other substances that produce the melanin. And one of the substances that produced the melanin, of course, was the inner eye, or what we call the third eye, or what the Europeans call the pineal gland, which is in the center of the brain. And the pineal gland produces a hormone that goes on to produce the melanin. And this is why I wrote this chart up here, melanogenesis, the beginning of melanin. The beginning of melanin, or the manufacture of melanin, actually starts with Ra, with the sun. And then the rays of the sun go on to hit our eyes, especially the pupils or the darker parts of our eyes. When the rays of the sun hits our eyes, brothers and sisters, it stimulates our eyes, and those rays go to the center of the brain by way of a pathway, which they call the neural pathway. On this neural pathway, it leads to the center of the brain, to a tiny group of nerve cells. And those nerve cells are the actual pineal gland. The pineal gland is a cluster of nerve cells that's in the center or in the midbrain. Now, when these nerve cells are stimulated, or what they call innervated, then it goes on to secrete or to put out the hormone melatonin, which goes on to deposit the melanin in our cells, in our pigment cells. So the pineal gland is the inner eye, or the third eye, in the midbrain, and melanin is the substance that colors our skin, our eyes, and our hair. So when we talk about melanin, we're talking about color, we're talking about pigmentation. Now again, as I stated before, this is something that we take for granted, brothers and sisters, but Europeans do not take melanin for granted. They take the pigment very, very seriously. They're working in the labs 24 hours a day in shifts here in the United States and also in Japan, because those groups of peoples are the peoples in the earth or on the earth that have the least amount of melanin. So they know that our melanin will save their lives. So they're working to duplicate, to make carbon copies of this substance that's in our pigment cells, or in our cells in general.
Melanin?
Melanin.
Melanin.
Yeah, do you know what melanin is?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Could I ask, what is melanin?
Yeah, see that sun up there?
Yeah.
Shines on you.
Oh, okay, so that's
Your skin. That black skin you got?
Okay.
Takes that sun,
Right.
blocks out the UV rays,
Right.
gives you vitamin D,
Okay.
and a whole lot of other things.
Right.
Okay? So that's what melanin is. Okay?
Now, also while you videotaping me.
No, I don't want to know nothing about a car. What's melanin?
What's who?
Melanin.
Melanin.
Melanin. You ever heard of melanin? Have you seen the commercials on TV about melatonin?
Sleeping at after sleep, tablet sleep.
No, I'm not familiar with it, but no doubt it's something to give you cancer in the kids.
No, it's supposed to stop cancer.
It's supposed to stop cancer, but it was original sleeping pills.
Oh, okay. They gonna use it?
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, what is melanin?
Melanin is some product I sold on TV and the news report was talking about. It was giving you energy and revitalizing you and probably slowing down the aging process, but I'm not that familiar with it. I'm more what I've seen in news reports that they've shown on the TVs.
Okay, that's all you know about it?
That's the only thing I know about it.
All right, thank you. Okay. Yeah, Baba, what is melanin?
Melanin is something that comes out of the pineal gland that produces melatonin.
Melatonin. That's that stuff they're advertising on TV, ain't it?
That's what they advertise. That's the synthetic stuff they advertise on TV.
Synthetic stuff. Yeah. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Baba.
Yes, sir.
I mentioned the word melanocytes. What do I mean when I say melanocytes? Let's take a look at this word, melanocytes. Melanocytes are the color cells. Melanocytes are color cells. They are the cells that hold the melanin. And it's an interesting thing about the melanocytes, brothers and sisters, because there are the same number. Africans and Europeans have the same amount of melanocytes, but they have a different structure and we have a different function. Our melanocytes act as individual melanocytes. They're dispersed more throughout our skin cells. But the melanocytes, or the color cells of Europeans, are more grouped together. So these are our color cells. Okay? In Africans, they are dispersed more individually in our skin cells, but in the Europeans, they're grouped more together. Also, the color cells in our skin are larger. Our melanocytes are larger. With Europeans, there's a much more smaller. And for African people, we are genetically programmed to produce more melanocytes. There's a an automatic genetic program in us that produces more and different structure melanocytes, or color cells. Now, this is the really heavy point about melanin. I mentioned genetically programmed for us. They are deprogrammed not to produce as many melanocytes, and their melanocytes, as I just stated, are smaller. This is the catalyst that actually spurs the production of the melanin. Tyrosine is an amino acid, and it's found in all dietary protein. In Africans, the tyrosine is accepted. As long as we are getting some type of food with protein in it, then our cells accept tyrosine, the amino acid or the enzyme. But Europeans are genetically programmed to not accept tyrosine. That's the biggest difference between Africans and Europeans. We are genetically programmed to accept the catalyst that actually produces the color, whereas Europeans, they don't accept it. I don't care how much dietary program or protein they have, they cannot accept tyrosine. They are genetically programmed to not accept the tyrosine, the catalyst to actually producing the melanin. That is what makes us different from Europeans. Okay. Now, an interesting subject is what's in the melanin? As the sister stated and the brother stated, I'm from Detroit. And when we were in a lecture at Wayne State University, a sister asked, well, what's in the melanin that makes it so important? What's in the melanin that makes us genetically stronger? Well, melanin consists of 4 very, very important chemicals. First, in the melanin is oxygen, which is a cleanser. When we go outside to breathe in the air, our body takes in the oxygen, and because of that oxygen, it cleans our blood. It cleans our system. Secondly is nitrogen. Nitrogen it acts as a tranquilizer. It relaxes us. That's another chemical that's in the air. So we have our nitrogen. The next substance that's in the melanin that makes it black is the carbon. Carbon, C-A-R-B-O-N. Okay? The same thing that's used to distill water. They put carbon crystals in it to distill water. Let's see. And the fourth thing is, see if I can look at this. Carbon, hydrogen. Oh, hydrogen. Hydrogen is water. So really, these are the secret ingredients. But the structure of these ingredients, Europeans don't know. And thank God they don't. They don't know in what ratio or how much oxygen is in the melanin cells, how much nitrogen, or what's the ratio of the carbon to the hydrogen. And when we say hydrogen, we're talking about water. So 4 of these substances are actually cleansers. The cleansers are the oxygen, the carbon, and the hydrogen. One substance, the nitrogen, is a tranquilizer. And it's in abundance in the hormone that actually deposits the melanin in the color cells. Now, let's talk a little bit about that. And again, I don't want to go too fast, but I was told that the brothers and sisters here were up on the melanin and you were very sophisticated. So I'm taking it from there.
To what I consider to be very, very critical questions. That we can talk about melanin, but at this point in time, in terms of what we see happening in front of us via television and via the media, that the question that we must ask ourselves is that can we as individual black people protect our melanin? Can we collectively protect melanin on this planet? Because I think that a very significant dialogue is going on with us. And if we're not looking broadly, we will miss the communication from the white side of the chessboard. I say that the most important analogy that we can use to center ourselves in reality of today's world is to understand that we are at a gigantic global chessboard. The white side of the chessboard is playing white supremacy for white genetic survival. And it is waging war on the black side of the chessboard where all people of color are placed. The black people being the most significant people representing the black side of the chessboard because we have the greatest quantity of melanin that can challenge white genetic survival in the perception of the people, the tiny minority of people on this planet who classify themselves as white. But that white side of the chessboard has been dialoguing with us for the past several thousand years, but let's just bring it up to present time and the last several months. I maintain that that white side of the chessboard is saying to us, I can kill 2 million of you at a time if I want. And I hope everybody looked at the pictures of the people in Rwanda and saw the high concentration of melanin in the people in Rwanda. That melanin is not protected. They tell us 1 million people were killed. I say they probably killed 2 million. And in my mind, 2 million were killed until proven otherwise. They have already announced to us that their virus that they manufactured, HIV, is going to kill 50 million people with melanin on the African continent. Several years back, getting us accustomed to the slaughter and destruction of melanin on this planet, they served us up Jonestown and said, I can kill 1,000 of you at a blow and make you not even look at it or think about it. Or I can kill you 20 at a time when I kill the people, the children in Atlanta. Or I can kill you by the hundreds in the urban centers of this area of the world. I am moving all over this planet, destroying melanated people and maximally melanated people anytime I get ready to think about it. And we have a gentleman in the White House who's saying my ratings are falling. But I can always get high ratings in the system of white supremacy if I just move out and kill some melanated people. Kill them in Panama, kill them in Grenada, kill them in Haiti, let them drown in boats anytime we get ready to do so. So do you understand my question? We can talk about melanin, but the critical question is, can we protect melanin? And they're saying up in our faces, you can't do anything about what I decide to do to you. Now, if we don't look at that challenge, if we direct our attention to other things, a massive movement is going on. Melanin is being destroyed. But the system of white supremacy says, I will be able, by offering grants, I will be able, by offering jobs, to tell you that you are the cause of the death of black people. I'll be doing it, but I'll make you focus on yourself and try to figure out how you can destroy one another. I'll do it to you in Rwanda. I'll set up the Hutu and I'll set up the Tutsis. I will give each group all the weapons they need. And I say, now I have taught you to hate your melanated selves. Now you fight each other. I'll do it to you on the streets in Los Angeles. I'll set up one group, the Crips, and another group, the Bloods. I'll set up all kind of Muslim groups and say, fight each other. I know I can get you to do it because I have programmed you for thousands of years to hate black. But if we don't see that this war is on the table, we will go off focusing on something else altogether, and the slaughter will continue. So I say, and I know you've heard me say this before, that when I say that the system of racism, white supremacy, is the critical thing that we must focus on, because that is what is waging war against us. The white people came up with a plan some years back, Global 2000, in which they said it's too many people of color on this planet. By the year 2000, it's necessary to get rid of 2 billion. They are about business. They are about serious business, removing as they deem necessary the people of melanin on this planet. If we do not understand and make an analysis that this is fundamental, it is this dynamic that is taking us out. Everything that we look at, everything else, I believe, and I could be wrong, but as it comes to me, it will be in vain. Everything that we are studying is important. Everything that we look at has high-level significance. But if we are not understanding this massive war and what is at stake, I believe we will not be able to apply our energy force in a laser-type manner so that we really begin to neutralize the war that is coming at us. To me, it is critically essential for us to develop or to articulate a new world order of dialogue. At each and every turn, we have to be saying to the white side of the chessboard, to the people globally who classify themselves as white. There's no other reason for people to classify themselves as white on this planet other than for the purpose of practicing white supremacy. And so if we begin to escalate, I'm going to ask the people if they let the little babies be quiet, because they're running up and down is getting at me at this late hour. We have to be able to dialogue back to them and say, we understand this war that is being waged against us, because if we don't label it for what it is, then they'll just keep that train rolling against us, and we just look up and more black people are dead everywhere. But we're not telling them, look, we understand what you're doing, and we understand precisely why you are doing it. They are working very hard to get us away from talking about racism, white supremacy. They are working very hard. Let's change the dialogue. Let's force them into a change of dialogue. We can do it by giving them grants to talk about multiculturalism, by giving them grants to talk about diversity, to tell them, oh, we don't talk about racism any longer. All this talk about victimizations, that's ridiculous. And so trying to slide us away from proper focus. But we have to hold the line and stay on course. Say, you can talk about diversity if you want. Why don't you sit over there and write the definition of what you mean by diversity? You can focus on multiculturalism if you want. This is our dialogue to the white side of the chessboard. Sit over and define what it is that you're talking about. I've asked them, what do you mean by diversity? They can't answer it. What do you mean by multiculturalism? They can't answer it. These are play words and play concepts that they try to get us to focus on, so we will not be keeping our eye on the proverbial ball. We have to say, no, we're going to hold the line. You can talk about whatever it is that you want.
Like you got these music programs on the radio, Whites didn't have any music programs. All they had was hillbilly and jazz, hillbilly. Blacks had all of them. You see, first disc jockeys were black disc jockeys because they had music to play. Whites didn't have no music to play. You can't promote no sales with no hillbilly music. You see, oh, let's look at this stuff they're selling. Hairstyles all come from the natural hairstyle. Look at all these new hairstyles the white women got, and black women. That's black culture that's developed into these hairstyles. Look at the oils that go with them. Look at the lipstick that go with them. Right. That's all they're selling. That's your culture they're selling. And you don't get a penny of it. You see what I'm trying to say? See? And when the natural came out and the cornrows came out, the white man just complained about them, and he's making $1 billion off of them while you still trying to straighten your hair. Oh, what a game. What a game. And they're getting paid for it. And they are getting paid for it. For the dance, the music. All right, let's go a little further and see what they're importing. See how they're doing it. Somebody said this morning, I think, over here, that they've taken everything from us happening. Well, the second thing they're going to put on the census this year is a mixed race category. Now, where did that race come from? God never created that. The mixed race was created out of the sex raping by the white man or the black woman. Now, what kind of race is that? That's his race. Now, that's destructive, but I'll tell you how that happens. That should not go on the census, and we should fight as much as we can to keep it from going on the census. Mixed race don't have anything to do with but us. He's creating us into another race. Blacks have been blacks, don't care how many drops of black blood they got in it. Right. Now, he has created this mixed race. He says, no, we're going to put on the census as a third race. God never created a mixed race. The white man created the mixed race. And now he's going to put on as a race. Now, I'll tell you what happened about this. Now, listen very careful. This is just like getting rid of it as a race. In our race, we have developed this color structure happening. Well, one is better than the other, and light stick white, and black stick back, and brown stick around, all that kind of stuff. So we've been making that work for the last 200 years or more. Now, the white man has seen us make it work and got over based on color. But he is going to do this. Once he creates the mixed race on the census, who determines then who is of the mixed race? Now, that's the trick. See, you're going to use what you've been determined about what's mixed race. Once they get on the census, he is going to determine. Now, everything and every person that's considered in the mixed race now won't even be in the mixed race. The mixed race consists of those whites that's got dark complexion will be mixed race. You know that's not you. Watch this game. The Italian with the dark hair, need a shave always, he's a mixed race. The Jew with the curly hair, you seen him? He's the mixed race. Watch this game. You see what I mean? The Arabs and Asians that's mixed in with blacks, those are the mixed race. Everything here that think they're going to be in the mixed race is going to be a nigger. You see, I'm trying to tell you ahead before you won't play the game on yourself. And just like integration, people run to integrate so fast, especially the black woman, because she thought she was going to get in the white world. Destroyed the whole black community to integrate with whites, and whites ran. Now she's running out there for him in their community. Now he's going to run to mixed race. And she think that, well, I'm mixed race, now we all in it together. The white man said, you can't have no white babies, how can you be with me? A light baby is not white. So what's going to happen? They're going to think they're going to get this, and come to find out, he's going to divide up the races. Over here is going to be the jet black and the Africans. Over here is going to be the light and the brown. But none of them is going to be in what? The mixed race. Because he's going to create some of his people to be in the mixed race. Now the definition of what's black and African changes. You understand how that game goes? I'm telling you ahead. See, and the black woman is primed for this. She's such a slick wench. She can't wait to get in the white man's bed. He don't want you in his damn bed no more after this. Because he will have had it made. He will have the mixed race where he controls it. See? So you're pushing for the mixed race with the light Negro. The light Negro and the mixed race is going to be over here. The mixed race is going to be white people that's not quite white as him. He got a buffer between you and them. That's who's going to be the mixed race people. And then he'll let some fool like this woman that's Hoppy Goldberg come along since she's a Jew. I'm mixed race, and he'll make her mixed race. That's how bad the game will get. Look how she acts now. And she get away with it, don't she? See, he can make anybody mixed race now. It's a selection process. Mixed race will get all the benefits. Mixed race will get the affirmative action. Mixed race will be in a category of rich white people. The white race won't be pressed that white is bad anymore, because the mixed race will relieve them of being white. White men that escaped the white world right into the mixed race. Oh my, look what I'm telling you now. I'm telling you ahead of time, especially the black woman who will support this. You will be with the black race from now on until you die, and you'll be dying black. Right. So that's who we're using to help promote it. I'm here to tell you now, we have to fight the mixed race census. Do you understand that? Because there's no such thing as a mixed race coming out the feet of a white man. That's a bastardized race that he created. God never created it. God ain't that bad. You rape for 500 years, then take the rape babies and make them a mixed race, then take the mixed races and you belong back over there. See? Then they use your birth certificate. Can you trace your mixed race? Mixed race got a birth certificate now. I mean, all of them that would be in the mixed race have a birth certificate. Look at the elimination process when you go to get a job. I'm just telling you ahead so you won't run into the game later. And, oh, he's racist. He's racist to start with. Don't wait till later. Wait till right now. Okay? All right, I just want to bring that part to you. Let me give you an example of it. One of the most is rap music. Right now, you have a complaint about rap music from some black women's and the Negro preacher on rap music. Rap music is a pure black art form, isn't it? It's nothing to do with whites at all. Put out by a little black youth some years ago. Nobody paid it much attention because it was youth music. They're talking bad, nobody paid it any attention. But I'll tell you what drew the attention. At first, when it first come out, it was just old bad blacks playing their music, you know, on the street corners and having good times, selling little tapes out the back. So nobody paid it any mind. Then all of a sudden, the white man kind of caught on to what was going on. Not that the blacks put it out because they had the intelligence to do what they did. They were just putting out music. Yeah. But the effect of it went into something else. This is what the effect of it was. First, it became a communication medium for blacks only. Yeah. Well, that was okay, talking old jive rap, talk through black music. But then when they start putting to talk to the police as a dog, kill the police. You see what I mean? And then so the white man saw there was a communication directed only to blacks against him. Then he said, oh, that's got to stop it. See? Then he got the black woman and the Jew and the preacher to say, he talking about you, calling you a hoe and a hoochie and a bad name. And who calls her in the West name than him? And so they said, no, it's bad music because it got gangster rap in it. The white man cares less than a damn about gangster rap and the black woman. So why is all this fuss about black music communication to black people being so bad? Because, number one, it's a black communications by blacks, for blacks, to blacks, against him. That's the first thing he don't like. Then he puts it off on like they talking bad about the black woman. That ain't what he talking about, talking bad about black. He's the biggest rape of the black woman going. So he can't be in her corner. You understand? Now, so he comes up and say we don't want it because it's causing American culture to go down. What's any worse than him got all this homosexuality, free sex, abortion, homosexuals in the army, all kind of filth on the TV. Now he wants to get rid of rap music because he loves the black woman. That's a lie. You see what I'm trying to say? He got too much other filth going to worry about the black woman. He better stay out the bed with her. So what I'm saying is then, that's the second one. Then he got some black women going to Time Warner and magazine last week. Well, can you imagine a black woman in here going to the white man, asking the white man to make her son stop playing rap music. That's a damn shame. If you can't make your own son stop calling you a whore, then you got to be one.
What'd you say?
Can you imagine a black woman going to the white man to make her own son playing rap music, which is his music, from calling her a hoochie or a whore or a wench or whatever? What's wrong with her?
Right.
She got to go to the white man and make him stop her son, who's making $1 million from calling her a bad name. If that's all it is to it. Now, that's a lie. You wouldn't dare catch an Asian woman down there asking a white man to make an Asian child to stop calling her a hoochie. In fact, he wouldn't be calling her if she wasn't doing anything wrong. Japanese woman, Chinese woman, Eskimo woman, Fijian woman, South American woman, Mexican woman. I haven't seen one of them asking a white man to make the Mexicans keep calling her a whore and a hoochie. Now, this is a disgrace. To black women, you have to do something about that. Right. Sitting up in Times Magazine begging the white man, the biggest rapist on the face of the earth, to make her son stop calling her a name. And it's her son. Goodness gracious, well, how bad can you get? Huh? You see what I mean? But the white man is not letting nobody know that he wants to stop the music because it's black music, he can't destroy it. They tried to imitate it, didn't they? It didn't work. They tried to do that. They sold everything else, but they can't steal that rap. It's just too raw and vulgar for him. It's just too raw, isn't it? See? And here's another thing he don't like. All musics, for some reason or another, all music is always criticizing the woman. Y'all are not that bad. Every race you go in, the woman is being criticized by the man in that race. Always about her doing something wrong. The men, I guess, don't do nothing wrong. We good, aren't we? All right. So now the black man in rap is criticizing the black woman about some things she's doing wrong. Well, the white man don't like that. Listen to what I'm talking about. He don't like that because you identify with her in criticizing her. Yeah. You identify and make her part of you. That's what he don't like. Oh, man, that's a slick devil.
It's like thyroid hormone. And you wouldn't expect a health food store to sell estrogen or thyroid hormone.
And finally, there's the question of safety. Since melatonin is not a prescription drug, its manufacturing is not monitored by the FDA, and there are no guarantees of purity. Critics say the story of what happened with another over-the-counter sleep aid, the amino acid L-tryptophan, is a grim reminder of what can happen.
The FDA now wants all existing supplies of L-tryptophan taken off the shelves altogether.
L-tryptophan was sold in health food stores until 1989. That's when an impure batch was linked to a blood disorder that caused 36 deaths and 6,000 injuries.
Can you be assured if you go out and buy a melatonin product that it's safe in terms of the manufacturing process?
There are no guarantees. The buyer always has to be aware. But in reference to melatonin, the product itself, so far as we know, is safe. The fact that melatonin has now been taken for a few months or a year by the public and that people are not dropping dead like flies in no way means that it's not going to happen a year or 2 or 6 years from now. We need to know these things before the stuff is sold to the public.
On this flyer, you see the graph. It says melatonin's path. Melatonin, the nighttime hormone. Why in the world would I call it the nighttime hormone? Obviously, because it's produced at night. And as you can see from the graph, some little letters at the bottom of the graph towards the left. It says critical period from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. That means that period, and you can see on the graph, if you look from 12 to 2, those bars are higher than in any other period to the right or to the left of the graph. That's because that's when the hormone melatonin is being produced in abundance, and when it's being produced, it's depositing the melanin in the bloodstream. So between the hours of 12 and 2, that's when you make your melanin. That's the time period where you make more melanin than in any other time, unless you're going to expose yourself, to sunlight. Of course, we make melanin when we expose ourselves to the sunlight. But biologically, we make it at night. Okay? So as you can see, starting at 9 o'clock, that's when the body actually kicks in. Now, this graph really is is made for the summertime, like this period of time, because it gets darker later. Usually gets dark around 8:30 or 9. So at 9 o'clock is when the body really begins to produce that melanin in summer. Now, okay, so we're talking about dusk. When the sun goes down, then it starts moving. Then as you can see at 10 o'clock, your body produces more melanin. At 11 o'clock, and then at 12, between 12 and 2, there's a big increase. So it's produced, that hormone is produced in darkness, and our melanin is produced in darkness. Now, when you get towards the daylight hours, that hormone is decreased. Now we've got sunrise, we've got dawn. As soon as the eyes perceive the light, then it starts to shut down. Then you produce another type of hormone, but basically it's melatonin, but it's known in a different name or with a different name. During the daylight hours, our body produces serotonin. It's melatonin, but with a different name. Now, during the daylight hours, the melatonin geeks you up so that you can work, so that you can have a lot of energy, so that you can go to your jobs and go to school and study, because you need that. So during the daylight hours, the melatonin acts as a catalyst. It geeks you up. It gives you the energy. At night, the melatonin relaxes you. And basically, that's what it does. It relaxes you. Okay? So melanin is one of a number of things that the pineal gland does, that tiny gland that's in the center of our brain. Now, let's go back in time, brothers and sisters, to the ancient African people and how they represented the pineal gland or the pineal eye or the third eye or the biological clock. Let's take a look at some information. Let's see, where's my eraser? What did I do with that thing? Oh, here it is. Okay. Now, this information is new to Europeans, but of course, it was not new to our people. The ancient African people knew of the pineal eye. They called it the eye of Horus. Or you might see in some books the eye of Huru. I'll just put H-O-R-U-S, and you could also spell it H-E-R-U. The eye of Huru, or the eye of Horus, who was the son of Isis and Osiris. Isis, of course, being the original Black Madonna, and Osiris being the main god. Now, some people, they get kind of confused, and they say, well, the ancient Egyptian people had many gods. They worshiped many gods. I mean, yes and no. They worshiped many gods, but they had one main god, and that one main god, his name was Osiris. Okay? So the eye of Huru was the pineal eye, was the third eye. And they call it pineal because it's shaped in the form of what they say is a pine tree, but what we say is, of course, the pyramid, the triangle. Okay? Now, the brother mentioned mathematics. In mathematics, we know from the study of the pyramids that our people were the first people to use this very, very important mathematical formula, c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared, to build the world's most famous triangular figure. And that figure, of course, was the pyramid. They used this so-called Pythagorean theorem, but it didn't have anything to do with Pythagoras, brothers and sisters. This was taught to that Greek about dynasty 18, I believe. I believe dynasty 18, but at least 1,500 years before Pythagoras was born. This theorem that deals with a triangle that has an angle that's shaped like a perfect L, the right angle, the angle that's 90 degrees. This is a critically important angle for mathematics. If you're building something, you're going to run across this triangle that has that 90-degree angle. Anytime you have this 90-degree angle, then you can apply this formula C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared, which they call the Pythagorean theorem, which should be correctly called the Kemetic theorem because the Kemites taught it to Pythagoras. Okay? Now, I don't want to get into very, very deeply into mathematics, but that's entirely another issue. So we're talking about the ancient Kemites, the people who walked along the Nile River. Okay? Pineal, melanin, blackness. They represented the pineal as the black dot. Okay? They had a number of representations for the pineal, but in their language they represented it as the black dot. Now you might see it like this in the language of Meta Nature. Okay? But basically that's incorrect. If I had some black chalk, I could kind of color this in, but basically it's a circle that's colored in with, I don't need that white. It's colored in with blackness, the black dot. We'll just use our imagination, okay? And this black dot was a part of their alphabet that stood for the letter H or K. Ka. That's how you pronounced it. Ka. Okay? Now, from this letter, which was a part of their alphabet, that's where we get the first or the oldest term for blackness. That's where we get the term Kim, K-H-M, or K-H-M-T. All right? So let's look at this word. Here's the K-H, the Ka, the black dot. Here's the M. The M was the owl. And even today, the owl is a symbol of wisdom, trust, quiet strength, knowledge. So this is what it meant. Here we have the Ka, here we have the M, and we have this little loaf, which is a T. So this is one of the earliest words for Kemet, which meant black. Okay? Now, we had another word that was similar to blackness, really that was black, and it was Shechem, or Shechemet. Now, Shechemet meant to be complete. So we see the word Shechemet, which meant to be complete, which meant black. So to our ancient ancestors, to be black meant to be complete. It meant success. It meant perfection. Now these were the ancient words that were associated with black. Obviously, in our society, black means everything that's bad, everything that's negative. Let's take a look, unfortunately, you know, they say the truth will set us free. Let's take a look at some of the words that are associated with black, brothers and sisters. Very interesting things start to happen.
Just had skin like brass is put in the furnace. Okay, given the description of the brother, this is the coming of the Antichrist. All right. The coming of the Antichrist was the European white Jesus, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus, sometime brown-haired, depending on which one colonized us, France or one of the other northern parts of Europe. So here we can see he's the one sitting on the throne. You see he looks nothing like the brother that was sitting on the throne that had the 7 seals. Now you see to the right the submitting white figure, okay, with the elongated death cross, and you see the brother who realizes that this is not Jesus, who has skin like brass as if put in the oven that we dealt with in Judaism last week. So this brother is looking closely as he looks and see that, hey, the Antichrist got him by the wrist there. But here they had to change it around. This is where they started to kill us spiritually by pointing out things that black was negative. Okay, it's a black day. Mama, what kind of cake are you fixing today? A devil's food cake. Mama, what kind of cake are you fixing next week? An angel's food cake. Okay. So here we were psychologically killing ourselves. Black became negative. If one was darker in the family in complexion, they were the black sheep of the family. Okay? These are the things that we find ourselves victimized by. They even said it was all right to tell a lie as long as you tell a little white lie. Okay? So they made the devil black. Here we can see in the 12th century a devil here, their devil, a so-called devil, forking some devils. Okay? This is the 12th century painting here that they painted these pictures. We go on. Here we can see this thing here, devouring white people. I always say somebody needs to come to divide them. All the hell that they have started on the planet, and bloodshed and death. And you know the subliminal message of King Kong. We're going to run through some things here for a minute. We'll get back on track. But here you can see King Kong, remember in New York City. He's tearing up New York City, and the only thing that could cool him out was what? A little white girl. That reminded me of Lou Alcindor, and the white girl got on TV. She, comes to about his waist and said, I made him a man. Okay. I made him a man. Okay. We go on. You see, here we can see that they had this fear of this black genetic seed. So here they have all these black demons and so forth. But this killed us as a people. Okay. We hated to identify ourselves as being black. We grew up watching Tarzan. You know what Tarzan did. We were always on Boy and Jane's side. Tell the truth. All right? It got me too. Okay? But I had to take care of it. But here we can see they got some white devils here in the pot, okay? And they're cooking them. I still say it's not a bad idea. But even the little cartoon characters, Bugs Bunny and all of them, this was a subliminal message to make us hate ourselves. And it was effectively done. We can see why the gang banging is so deep in the streets, okay? And why it's nothing for a brother to take another brother's life, okay? That was the self-hate. That was the extreme of it. When our little children grew up and the white teacher says, I want you to go to the Webster's Dictionary and look up the word black. We looked it up and it says the color of coal, strictly the absence of all colors, which is a lie, okay, or of all illumination, to a Negro, okay, you know what Negro means, dead, necro, okay, necromaniac, necrophilia, okay, one, entirely or relatively dark, two, dismal, wicked, evil, calamitous, three, again, that you know, Negro. This is Webster's Dictionary. Contemporary Webster, okay? Okay, so we go on to see, they even go on to say, put us in the term of a fly, a black fly, a very small fly, a gnat. Okay? Now, why couldn't they say black? The carbon atom, which is the essential life in the universe. Black, the blackness of the universe and the black hole. Okay? Why couldn't they say this? Huh? Blackness, which all life starts from the woman's womb. But this is what we get. Calamitous, dismal, wicked, evil, Negro, fly, gnats. Okay? Then someone says, you hate white people. But white people write us in their literature. This is what they do to us. Murder us. Okay? So we have to look at it. We go on, the pure one. The pure one, you know what they told us. White means pure. So here we see some demons here, so-called demons, stripping from the evil demon here, virgin demon, okay, stripping of her baby here. These are 12th century paintings here, okay? Images of blacks of Western art. In the church, subliminal message there too. You know the preacher at the pulpit. Oh, free my evil black heart, oh Lord. Wash my heart whiter than snow. Show me the great white way. What was he saying when he said that? Show him the great white way. Here they have the swine, put us on swine so they know we will become Negro, Saxon, swine minds. Okay? But sometimes the religion doesn't work. So on the opposite side of the street of the storefront, there was the liquor store. That's why they had Blue Nun, Paradise Wine, knowing that they would name themselves in the name of religion because they know that that would mess up their mind just as well and effectively as their religion for those who didn't take to the religion. They had the liquor store on the corner. Okay? We go on. Here we have a hippie Jesus. Give him a joint. He'll look like any hippie walking down the street. You want to fall down to a Jesus? Fall down to any hippie, reefer-smoking white boy. Okay, because that's what we're bowing down to. That's who's on the scene right now, the Antichrist. Okay? Here he is here. Give him a shave and a haircut and he'll look like your insurance man. Okay? Give him a shave and haircut. He'll look like Ronald Reagan. Okay? We go on. Here's the great white way. You saw this in the church. Here he is here. And the pure white angel, okay, hanging on, busting out of the hells of heavens here. We believe this is going to take place. A lily white God, okay, an old man here. We go on. Here we see black and brown so-called demons stopping some white demons from going to heaven. Here's some white people here, so-called pure white people, going to heaven. Here you have a lily faggot heaven, Jesus into heaven. This is where we wanted to go. That's why we wanted to move on the other side of town. We felt we would make it to heaven. Just like the Last Supper, okay? We must have been in the kitchen that day too, cooking the meal, because we weren't at the table at the supper either, okay? That's the truth. Still, a bunch of faggots at the dinner table. See, freedom can let it go. There's no problem with it. We go on. A faggot heaven again. You know that song, Climbing the Staircase to Heaven. I can't sing, but you know what I'm talking about. Here we see some so-called demons pulling some devils down off the ladder because they were bisexuals. They weren't completely faggots, so they had to go. Here you have Peter at the gate, or Jesus at the gate, letting the other faggots come into the lily white faggot heaven. This is what we saw on the church, okay? We go on. Jehovah's Witness came to my door one day. They said, they showed me this book. I said, who is this? They said, this is Jehovah. Looking like Abe in that thing in Washington, D.C. Sitting up here in the stellar events. Going door to door messing our people up. Jehovah's Witness. Okay? Look, Abe Lincoln here. They came to my door. I have one of those cages on the door. Okay, they came in and I locked them in. Got them. Pull out my projector. They ran out. I said, I'm Peter. I got the key to heaven. They couldn't get away. They couldn't get away. They were kicking at the door, let me out.
Very interesting things start to happen when we have this, what I call the black test. All right, here we see the word black. Anyone, when I say the word black, what do you think of? What's the first word that comes into your mind? Anybody? Yes. I can hear you. Presence of color. Color. Someone over here said, beautiful. All right. Have a very conscious audience. Color. Power. Yes, yes. Anybody else? The unknown. Okay. Anybody else? Timeless. Interesting. Timeless. Original. First. Anybody else? Awesome. Okay. Basically, as I stated before, evidently, you're a very conscious audience, because these were the words that the ancient ancestors associated also with blackness. All right, now let's try another word. Let's see what you come up with. I hope everybody's got that written down. All right, let's try white. When you think of white, when I say the word white, what's the first word that comes to your mind? Death. Beast. Colorless. Absence of color. Absence of. What is it? I don't hear what you say. Absence of light. Reflective, yes. Somebody said something over here was loveless. AIDS. What? Devil, yeah. Evil. Okay? Okay, now I'm running out of space, so. Okay. These were the words, particularly death, evil, and devil, but especially these two words our ancestors associated with the color white. So to be black meant to be divine, meant to be awesome, meant to have power, meant to be complete, meant to be perfect. So as African people, we have all of those characteristics within us. So there should be no reason why we cannot solve our problem. All we've got to do is reach back into our genes and bring up color, beauty, power, the unknown, timeless, original, first, and awesome. Okay? Okay. Now, let's go on to some more information about the melanin. In regards to the melanin. Okay, now I want to go back, kind of backtrack, and go back to the pineal eye. Well, what was the difference in the pineal eye with the Europeans and with the Africans? How did they see it? Okay, now with the ancient Africans, the pineal eye was largely that. It was largely an eye. They saw it basically as the inner eye. Okay, the eye of Haru, the eye of Horus. But for Europeans, they see it largely as a clock. And they're correct in that sense because it is a clock. It helps us to be timed with our environment. Let's look at some specific things or some specific discoveries that they've made about the pineal eye or the pineal clock. What does it do besides produce the melanin, which is a heavy point in and of itself? Now, these things that I'm going to mention relate very well to the melanin. The pineal eye has a number of functions. First, it functions as an eye. Then it functions as a clock. And as I stated, you know, as you saw on the flyer, it knows when to produce that melanin. It knows what time. It tells the body, well, hey, it's 12 o'clock. It's time to put out that melanin in those color cells. So we have an eye. We have a clock. It is also a compass. That means that with the melanin in our system, it helps us to find our direction. Now, to the ancient Egyptian people, their direction was a little different from the Europeans. Of course, in the European system, we have north being at the top of the globe, or at the top of the compass. Here we have north, south, east, and over here we have west. Okay? But for the ancient Hamites, their direction was up south. So we had south at the top, north at the bottom. Okay? And this relates again to the mathematics that the brother was speaking of earlier. Because if we make a circle around these 4 points, we have what you call the unit circle. And that is a unit circle that we use to solve our trigonometry problems. So over here we have the south at the top, north at the bottom. West would be over here, according to the directions of the ancient Egyptian people, and east would be to the left. So we say down south, they would say what? Up south. They would say up south, down north. And why is that? It's because the Nile River began in the south of Africa. It begins in that area of Uganda or Uganda and Tanzania. Then it flows upward. So this is why, and I really should put, okay, so south to the ancient Africans would be Upper Egypt. Okay? And then the north, that would be Lower Egypt. Okay? Now, let's get back to the word Kemet, which was the first word for blackness, for melanin. Okay? Here we have Kim, which means black. Okay? And then the Greeks really gave us the term melanin. They used melos, which meant black. Okay? Now, when we look at Egypt, the Greeks used the term Egypt, Egyptos, but our people called their own country Kemet, the black land, or the land of the blacks, or the land of the black people. So again, we have KHMT. Now, when our people used their language, when they wrote hieroglyphics, and again, that's a Greek term, but when they wrote hieroglyphics, they didn't use vowels. They only used consonants, okay? So I'm going to write the different terms for blackness so you can see visually exactly what's going on from the language of the ancient Kemites. Okay, here we go. All right, first we have Kim, which means black. And we have this word in the language of the Medu-Neter. We have the owl. And basically that's it. Now that's the basic word for black in the language of hieroglyphics. Then we have the black land, and that would be Kemet. Okay? So again, we have this symbol, which is a charred piece of wood. It's burnt at the end. We have the letter M. All right. So for the black land, we have the T, which gives it, or which is this symbol, the loaf. And we have this symbol, which means land or location. Okay. All right. Now this symbol here is a symbol for a place or a country or land. But this symbol isn't necessarily alphabetical. It's what they would call a determinative. When our people would write the language of hieroglyphics, and I'll get into the etymology of that in a couple of minutes, they would write the letters. Here we have KH, M, and here we have our T. But this is a symbol that's used, this is a symbol that's used to help you understand what the word is. What are they talking about? They're talking about a location. So this isn't pronounced, but it's a concept. It's something that helps us to understand what this word is. So now let's go, I think I've got a couple more. Let me write the next one. Here's one, here's two, here's the third one. Number 3. All right. Here we have Kim again, but it's a little different. It has another symbol. And of course the owl. But it has this symbol, which is a symbol for a word that is abstract. This symbol is a papyrus roll, P-A-P-Y-R-U-S. It's kind of hard to see, but it's spelled papyrus, P-A-P-Y-R-U-S. Now, this is a papyrus roll that's tied up or rolled up and tied. This was their symbol for a book. By itself, it means book, because their books were papyri. They got their books or their paper for the books from the papyrus plant, which grew along the edges of the Nile River. Now, again, this is the Greek term, papyrus, but they would use the term papu, P-A-P-Y. So the Greek term is papyrus, but the Egyptian term is papu, P-A-P-U. And that was their word for paper. This is where we get the word paper from. They would make their paper from the papyrus plant, which grew in abundance in Lower Kemet. In fact, the symbol for Lower Kemet was the papyrus plant. Okay? All right. They would cut the plant in strips and cut it diagonally, and they would lay the strips down horizontal and also vertical. And they would press the strips or the papyrus strips together, and then the natural glue would immerse to bind it. They would let it sit for about 8 days, and after it would dry, you could write on it. And that's the first paper. Now that's why we know so much about the ancient Egyptian people, because of the paper that they used to record their history. And the people that recorded their history were the scribes. Okay? The oldest known mathematics book was written by an Egyptian scribe whose name was Amos. Okay. All right, so we have the third term for Kim, which means black. And again, this papyrus rolled up and tied. This means that the word is an abstract word. Okay? And the last one is Shechem. This fourth one is S-K-M. And we would use this symbol here, which is alphabetical, which is their symbol for the letter S. And we'd also use, again, this charred piece of wood. The end of this piece of wood has been burnt, and it's black, because the ancient Greeks described the Egyptians as the burnt-faced people with the woolly hair. They were not white, which some Europeans are still trying to tell us today. Okay? So we have S, K-H, and then again we have the owl, which is the letter M, that symbol of knowledge, wisdom, and quiet strength and trust. And we have the T, and I'll put some of these down, some of these letters down here. And again, we have the papyrus. The papyrus rolled up and tied. So this means Shechem, which means black, which meant complete. Okay? Complete, success, and perfect. They called Osiris Lord of the Perfect Black. Okay? All right. Now, let's go on. Talking about the melanin and the pineal gland, which actually produces the melanin. Okay? Now, the last point that I mentioned about the pineal gland was that it was a compass. It helps us to set our directions. And this is because some information that Europeans had written on last summer, 1993, in May of 93. They have found that in the area of the third eye, there are a lot of magnets in the area of the third eye, a lot of magnet crystals. And those magnets, of course, is what helps us to set our directions of north, south, east, and west. And this is the directions that the hieroglyphs were written in. It was written from top to bottom, from left to right, from right to left. It could be written in columns and also horizontal, vertically and horizontal. And I mentioned the fact that the word itself, hieroglyphics, was the word that was given to us by the Greeks. Hiero. Hieroglyph. Okay? Hiero means high. And glyph means a decorative writing. A decorative carving or writing. Now, they said that the Egyptian priests were the people that wrote the hieroglyphics, but there were other people that wrote the hieroglyphics other than the priests. You had the scribes. Those were the two very high echelon Africans in that particular society. You had the scribes and the priests. These were the ones that wrote the books. Okay? And as I stated before, the oldest math book that was written in 1650 BC was written by the scribe Amos. And it has evidence that our people knew arithmetic, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and the beginnings of calculus, and that's documented. So it's no reason why we should be poor in math, because we invented the mathematics and we wrote about it in our books, in our papyri. Now, our people call their writings the writings of the God's words. They call their writings Medu Neter. Okay? Neter meaning God. And Medu meaning word. So you have the divine words, or the words of the gods. Medu Neter. Now, how did they write that in the language of Medu Neter? Now that we have the word,
the psychology of ancient Kemet. No way to make it clear. Let me try one aspect of it in the time that we have available and see what we can do. The wisdom of ancient Kemet is like a vast tapestry of amazing complexity, with colors and dimensionality covering the full range of man's vision and envisioning. Each thread of the tapestry has been carefully woven such that every thread is defined by every other. And the tapestry holds together in its wholeness only because every thread is present. No thread can be unraveled meaningfully without destroying the tapestry. Such is the task which faces anyone who seeks to explore any thread of the knowledge of ancient Egypt. As Schwaller de Lubis has observed, excavations and philological studies supply the Egyptologists with abundant material for a knowledge of the life, beliefs, and theology of ancient Egypt. An encyclopedic amount of work is available to researchers. Nevertheless, he says, pharaonic Egypt remains unknown in terms of its true science, its contingent psycho-spiritual knowledge, and its philosophical mentality. In short, because of the complexity of the wisdom of ancient Egypt, it's very difficult to go in and say, this is the psychology, this is the physics, this is the chemistry, this is the mathematics, and make divisions which were artificial to begin with, because they all existed in a whole total perspective that one fed and grew upon the other, and you can never separate them from the other. There was no such thing as sacred versus secular. There was no such thing as the life of this world and the life of the other world. There was no such thing as the religious versus the political life. It was all tied intimately and inextricably together. So to even engage in this process becomes an engagement in doing something that actually does not do justice to the vastness of the knowledge which existed in that time. So we are going to try to be rational and fragmented to deal with things that are supra-rational and holistic. Let us be clear, though. Even though psychology explicitly in ancient Egypt does not exist, it is important to realize that man was viewed as the fundamental metaphor for all higher truth. The gods, the neters,
I don't want to get into this, but netters is a better word. Because those who have attempted to understand ancient Kemet speak of them as having a pantheon. Pantheon is a Greek concept. They were the ones who made the principles of nature that they had learned from the Kemetic people into separate gods and worshiped them as separate deities, whereas the concept of netters does not mean gods, it means principles that were personified and symbolized because they transcended the scientific objective definitions that somehow could fit into a narrow perspective, so they were giving a mythical appearance to try to describe the intricacies of nature working above and beyond all that was there. So the idea of a pantheon is a European prostitution, prevarication. It does not represent what they got from their teachers. Naughty, naughty students. So clearly, effectively understand the relevance of the Kemetic notions of the mind. It's important to understand the limited notions of the mind which have emerged out of Western thought, out of the Judeo-Christian European conception of the human being and the human functioning. We must understand, first of all, that Western development is in fact deficient. It is deficient because the technology has far outstripped the human knowledge. We have vehicles and vessels of technological expression which far exceed the human development. We have more human problems of a basic nature in this society than societies with much less concept of technology ever have. We have to learn to go how to do basic things like love and make love and have families and raise families and interact with other human beings in a meaningful way. We have to go back and take classes in learning that, which apes do very well. Despite the fact that we have video recorders and we have astronauts going to the moon and all these other great things, despite all those technological advances, we are humanly retarded. And I would submit to you that a reason for that is because of the limited conception of the human being, which is developed in Western psychology and in Western thinking. If we take the word psychology itself, which the Westerners have distorted and reduced to mean the scientific study of human behavior, we find the first flaw of ignorance. The word itself, psyche, which has a Greek origin, which had an African origin, is usually equated with the Greek goddess Psyche, meaning soul. According to Massey in the Book of the Beginnings, he says that the word psyche is actually derived from the Egyptian, in which Ka, K-H-E, is the soul, and Su is she. Hence the feminine nature of the Greek Suki or Psyche. Without the P, the word Saku in Egyptian means the understanding, the illuminator, the eye and the soul of being, that which it inspires. The point of it is not only is the study of the human mind passed down to us in its modern context out of Greece, who stole it from Africa, but even the word which is used for the pursuit of that study is based upon its African origin. But of course, no one likes to admit that reality. Now, we then must understand that because of the distortion in the definition of having gone from the study of what was the soul to being the study of behavior, we find a whole array of distortions which have followed from that, which serves as the basis for the problems that we have. Very briefly, and I don't want to spend most of my time on this, I just want to run through a brief of these descriptions of Western psychology. First of all, man is viewed as an object, and emphasis is placed upon objective methods for studying him. Meaning, of course, that it's assumed that all knowledge is external. Everything comes from the outside, including salvation. That the human being is no more than a tabula rasa that's imprinted upon by things in the environment. And the only way you can understand man is by objectively standing out and dealing with man as if he's a rat. In Western psychology, it is no longer legitimate to even ask a man what he thinks, because that's considered to be unscientific, unobjective, and therefore does not qualify to be put into the pursuit of scientific pursuits. The idea that somehow objectivity is the virtue of science, and therefore to have anything which suggests that the person can have an intuitive, introspective, subjective awareness of himself is a recognition and a prostitution, if you will, of what has come to be known science. Secondly, quantification is the only accepted measure of reality. If you can't count it, it ain't real. The idea that anything that can't be put on a scale, a measure, a ruler, a scale of some sort to weigh it or measure it, it isn't real. So there's no such thing as intelligence if you can't put numbers on it. There's no such thing as happiness if you can't put numbers on it. You can't even be crazy unless you get a score above 70 on MMPI. So everything has to be quantified in order to be real. Third, the material world is viewed as essential, and the essence of man is assumed to be material. That means that body is being. That somehow what you are physiologically defines what you are as a human being. It defines the equation between a rat, a monkey, a roach, and a person. The idea being that since they're all body, since they're all material, then they're all the same thing. So the study of a rat tells you about the study of a human being because of the equation. Not only that, there's no need, of course, to pursue anything beyond the visible body. Anything before or after that could not be considered as relevant data. Number 4, there is no concept of a superior power or purpose of man. Therefore, man is sort of serendipitously here. He just growed, as Totsi said. He has no concept, he has no direction, he is a part of no order. There is nothing to look to man to expect of him because he pursues no particular track. Western psychology now, these are the lies we are talking about. Number 5, the observable activities of a person are the critical dimensions of his being. That's the behavior thing again. What you see is what you get. Number 6, concepts such as soul, spirit, revelations, or any non-observable phenomena is viewed as superstition, delusion, or has no relevance to the understanding of man. 7, life and consciousness are identical with physical processes, meaning that brain is equivalent to mind. We can then tell you the concept of your mind by understanding the functioning of your brain. So the pursuit of knowledge of the mind is no more than pursuit of knowledge of the brain. If we can alter it chemically, we can change your mind. And your mind has nothing to do with the alteration of your chemistry because your mind is a servant of the chemistry, according to them. Man's individuality is paramount, and there is no transpersonal awareness, meaning that there is no such thing in Western psychology as a group or a collective mind. The whole idea of Africanity, the whole idea of African people, the whole idea of an ethos, the whole idea of a mentality that ties people together, that transcends their individuality, is absolutely unheard of and unaccepted in Western psychology. You are an individual, isolated being, and that's the extent of it. Number 9. Man is a product of biological determinants, personal experiences, and chance. Self-explanatory. There's no correct order for man's development. He survives against odds by adaptation to his environment. We've talked about that. Morality and values have no meaning outside of personal experience. Therefore, if there's no order, then you don't expect people to do anything. Therefore, they can do anything as they do in this society. If you assume that there's no particular project, no particular direction, no particular sense to the nonsense, then morality is meaningless. So therefore, in Western psychology, all they do is observe it, feed it back, and often feed it, and therefore begin to create the greatest perverts the world has ever known here in Western society. The child molesters, all the rest of the goody things that have been created by this concept that thinking that morality is the purview of the church and not the purview of effective human development. Number 12, and most devastating of all, death of the body is death of the mind, and one need not attend to life before or after the body. Now, this is Western psychology, and in the process of making these conclusions, of locking us in to this limited time phase of 2 years or 2 months or 70 years or 60 years or 65 years, from the moment of birth in this plane to death in this plane, to define the totality of human consciousness as belonging there. They have blocked our expansion to reach beyond time and throughout the whole universe. But psychology is narrow-minded. That's why you've got narrow, limited, tiny, itsy-bitsy people who have not begun to grasp their potential in this society. That's Western psychology. Let's move on. Two things account for this that I'd just like to mention briefly because this is an entirely different discussion. Sexism and racism. By dividing the world up into two phases, mind and body and all the other dualisms, male and female, and making the two absolutely separate from each other, they have created an illusion that any characteristic that's associated with female therefore has no place in understanding the functioning of real mind. The concept of psyche or soul having historical connection with femininity, which of course has a Kemetic root too, presumes then that soul stuff is inferior stuff. So therefore soul has no place in the scientific, powerful, masculine tradition of Western science. So that fear of femininity, that fear of spirituality, that fear of anything that they have put into the realm of the feminine is eliminated. And then to add on top of that, there is the blatant racism. Dr. Diop has said in his comments, he says, the common denominator which characterizes the mindset of Egyptologists as repeated in their various theses about ancient Africa, is their seeming desperate necessity and unrelentless attempt to refute ancient Africa's blackness. It was scary to accept the fact that black people built what they had to emulate. It's painful for them to internalize the concept that their society, their civilization is rooted in something that emanated out of the minds of the people who they chose to define as being inferior. So the fear of women and the fear of African people combined together to create this overwhelming fear which made them run away from the other sides of themselves. And in running away from the other sides of themselves, they created this prostituted and prevaricated so-called science which excludes the most significant components. The fundamental error of dividing man up in this dichotomous way and putting him into mind, into body, and making that which is mind and spirit either become feminine or superstitious or mystical or spiritual, which of course women and black people have a lot of. So they talk about black magic and mysticism and all that spiritual stuff among African people, but they do it in a derogatory and a degrading sense. The idea is that spirituality is inferior to science. And in order to speak profoundly, one must speak scientifically, because that's that weak stuff. But it's very significant that they gave what they could not handle to those who they could not accept. And they gave that which they could not understand to those who gave them all that they have. And in the process of doing so, they divided their own potential for development. That's why we need to redeem them and redeem ourselves before they kill us. Let's go on. The psychology of ancient Kemet. No way to make it clear. Let me try one aspect of it in the time that we have available and see what we can do. The wisdom of ancient Kemet is like a vast tapestry of amazing complexity, with colors and dimensionality covering the full range of man's vision and envisioning. Each thread of the tapestry has been carefully woven such that every thread is defined by every other. And the tapestry holds together in its wholeness only because every thread is present. No thread can be unraveled meaningfully without destroying the tapestry. Such is the task which faces anyone who seeks to explore any thread of the knowledge of ancient Egypt. As Schwaller de Lubis has observed, excavations and philological studies supply the Egyptologists with abundant material for a knowledge of the life, belief, and theology of ancient Egypt. An encyclopedic amount of work is available to researchers. Nevertheless, he says, pharaonic Egypt remains unknown in terms of its true science, its contingent psycho-spiritual knowledge, and its philosophical mentality. In short, because of the complexity of the wisdom of ancient Egypt, it's very difficult to go in and say, this is the psychology, this is the physics, this is the chemistry, this is the mathematics, and make divisions which were artificial to begin with, because they all existed in a whole total perspective that one fed and grew upon the other, and you can never separate from them from the other. There was no such thing as sacred versus secular. There was no such thing as the life of this world and the life of the other world. There was no such thing as the religious versus the political life. It was all tied intimately and inextricably together. So to even engage in this process becomes an engagement in doing something that actually does not do justice to the vastness of the knowledge which existed in that time. So we are going to try to be rational and fragmented to deal with things that are supra-rational and holistic. Let us be clear, though. Even though psychology explicitly in ancient Egypt does not exist, it is important to realize that man was viewed as the fundamental metaphor for all higher truth. The gods, the netters, I don't want to get into this, but netters is a better word, because those who have attempted to understand ancient Kemet speak of them as having a pantheon. Pantheon is a Greek concept. They were the ones who made the principles of nature that they had learned from the Kemetic people into separate gods and worshiped them as separate deities, whereas the concept of netters does not mean gods, it means principles that were personified and symbolized because they transcended the scientific objective definitions that somehow could fit into a narrow perspective, so they were giving a mystical appearance to try to describe the intricacies of nature working above and beyond all that was there. So the idea of a pantheon is a European prostitution, prevarication. It does not represent what they got from their teachers. Naughty, naughty students. So clearly, the understanding of man was viewed as paramount in the science, the wisdom, and the theology of ancient Egypt. The study of religion and science, mathematics, psychology, and government was the study of man. You know, it is not accidental, even though, given the kind of limited understanding we have of these things, we've come to think of things like astrology and alchemy and numerology as being superstition. It simply represented that those people understood that you could not talk about mathematics without talking about man. Therefore, numerology talked about the relationship between symbolic quantification and human evolution. Alchemy talked about the connection between the transformation of processes and minerals in nature with the transformative potential in the human psyche. So alchemy transcends chemistry. It is not less than, it is greater than. Of course, when the materialist Europeans got a hold to it, they the kind of wild stuff. But that again represents naughty students who didn't learn well, rather than the meaning of the science itself, astrology. As Dr. Van Sertima pointed out last night in his presentation, the study of the stars, astronomy, was talking about the relationship between human process and celestial process, recognizing a connection between the two and the inseparability of the two, understanding that human development and astral development were all allied and related, and therefore the evolution of mind was related to the evolution of the heavens, and the movement and the timing and the consistency of nature was integral to understanding the development of mind. So alchemy, astrology, numerology, we must rediscover in their certain form. And I'm not talking about Linda Goodman stuff too. You are compatible with a Cancer because she has good sex appeal in her crab-like orientation. I'm talking about the real stuff. I'm talking about the stuff that they stole that from and reduced to nothingness. So we now throw out the most essential part of our wisdom, because we've lost the connectedness that belongs to our own science. Man is a microcosm, and in understanding man, one understands all of nature. Now, the fundamental principle where we learn to approach this issue of psychology in ancient Kemet is in terms of the whole concept of consciousness, awareness, what the ancients referred to as knowledge of self. The concept of man know thyself is the fundamental principle of the psychology of Kemet. Dr. George G.M. James observed that the doctrine of self-knowledge, for centuries attributed to Socrates, is now definitely known to have originated from Egyptian temples, on the outside of which the words, man, know thyself, were written. You could not enter into the process, not the doors, not the portals, not the physical structure. You cannot enter into the process of the temple until you understood that the fundamental principle of development was man, know thyself. The foundation of consciousness, the foundation of growth, the foundation of psychological development was rooted in that principle. Dr. James goes on to say that self-knowledge, then, is the basis of all true knowledge. The mysteries required as a first step, and know thyself. The foundation of consciousness, the foundation of growth, the foundation of psychological development was rooted in that principle. Dr. James goes on to say that self-knowledge, then, is the basis of all true knowledge. The mysteries required as a first step, the mastery of the passions, taming of the wild inner beast, putting the inner beast under the control of the higher being. We'll talk about that more later. But that was step one, to know the animals, the wild steeds, to know the wild beasts that live within first. And by knowing them, one brought them under control. By understanding them, one reduced them to servitude to the higher processes in the human being. After the first step, it said, this made room for the occupation of unlimited powers. Isn't that something? That somehow the passions run wild in the psyche, in the consciousness, if they are not tamed. And by passions running wild, it leaves no room for the higher powers to enter. But when they are quieted, subdued, and submitted, then the room is quiet for the higher powers to come in. And then the second step, the neophyte was required to search within himself for the new powers which had taken possession of him. Man, know thyself. Essentially, we find in this doctrine of self-knowledge a simplified description of the initial psychology of consciousness. Man's capacity to know himself was established as a fundamental human characteristic, and in pursuit of that knowledge of oneself, one was in pursuit of knowledge of all things. The question of consciousness is fundamental for understanding the ancient Egyptian conception of human psychology. Initiation into the mysteries was not only a system of education, but a metaphor for the total development of the human soul through life and death. I'm sure that Dr. Hilliard will talk about this later on today, but the whole word of education, educere, which means to educe or to pull out, was based upon the idea that all that the man needed to know was already inside anyway. And education simply provided an environment to educe the higher potential that was already built in. So you don't put nothing on